Welcome to Journey Home to Self. This is a place for us to explore the milestones, the roadblocks, the pit stops, and the breathtaking sights on the most important journey of our lives. The journey of coming back home to you. My hope is that through the stories, insights, knowledge, and wisdom we share here, you get inspired and activated to widely fall in love with choosing yourself every single moment. I'm your host, Deepshikha Sairam, and I am truly so excited and honored that you are here. Let's dive in and journey home to self together. Hey friends, welcome to Journey Home to Self. I am excited about introducing our guest for today and bringing this topic up for discussion on the podcast. This has definitely been a super interesting episode for me, as I did not really have much knowledge on today's podcast episode topic, which is using psychedelics as a part of the healing process, what that looks, what that means, and how that looked for our guest. I had definitely heard about using psychedelics. I have probably even read just very little about it, but I didn't really know what that meant. I didn't really understand how that worked. And I was very curious about this discussion. And we just wanted to bring this topic in front of all of you. A very important part of Journey Home to Self is the healing part. That's what we are doing. I look at it as emptying so that we can fill ourselves with more of who we are, right? And I loved our guest's point of view and her experience and her openness in sharing on how she used psychedelics in her healing journey. Christy Cegelski, our guest today, is a copywriter for coaches and creatives. She writes personality-packed, connection-driven copy that helps brands attract their perfectly fit clients by showcasing their special brand and their personality. However, today, she isn't really talking about how to write copy and how to build a personality-packed brand. She's talking about how she healed herself, or I should actually say she's in the process of healing herself using psychedelics, and how that became a big part of her healing. We talk a little bit about how she decided that she wanted to take a business sabbatical to focus on healing childhood trauma that included physical and sexual abuse, neglect, and poverty. She talks about the ins and outs of using psychedelics as a part of her experience. So she talks about what that means, how that worked for her. And she talks about the messy middle of recovery and healing. A big why behind me asking Christy to come on this podcast was that, everybody, when we talks about healing, when we talks about a journey home to self, everybody wants to talk about the dramatic before and the dramatic after. Everybody wants to get to that after, that beautiful feeling of wholeness and feeling great and manifesting tons of money and manifesting whatever you want and just being perfect. However, in my experience and in Christy's experience, this healing happens in circles. It happens in layers. It happens in little by little. It happens big steps backward and then small steps forward. I remember there was this point in my healing journey. And like I said, I haven't had experience with psychedelics, but I've had experience with other healing modalities. My big experience was that when I would think that I am towards the end, something would happen in my life and I would be like, oh my God, I am at the beginning. There's like so much, it was like a maze and you would think that you are right at the exit, but you're somewhere close to the beginning. And being okay with that, being okay with being in the messy middle is the way to be. And Christy exemplifies this with so much grace with her story. And it's all about learning to navigate the path forward and not so much about getting to the after effects of the healing. So this episode is definitely juicy. It's definitely not for everybody. Christy is super honest about her healing journey, and I totally respect her for that. And she's honest about the use of psychedelics. I hope that through this episode, we are able to bring you another aspect of healing, another way that is available to you if you want to go to that path as well. So let's welcome Christy and hear about her healing journey with the use of psychedelics. Hi, Christy. I'm so excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I am seeing you after such a long time.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
It's been a minute. All right. Before we go on to this very interesting, juicy conversation, and thank you so much for agreeing to being on the show and sharing your experience, I would love for the listeners to know a little bit more about you. So tell us who you are, where do you live, where you at right now.
Well, I am a copywriter. I mostly work with coaches and creative entrepreneurs in the online space. My specialty is kind of personality-packed, connection-driven copy. I really try to focus on helping people attract like their perfect fit clients by sharing, who they are. And I'm actually back from a business sabbatical that was about a little over 5 months long.
Wow. It definitely seemed longer to me.
Yeah, I mean, some days it felt longer, and there were times I really missed the whole creating content and being out there every day.
Yeah.
But mostly I really just enjoyed the time, and I needed a break because I really was at a point where I wanted to quit. I really thought I was going to quit my business. Like it wasn't for me anymore. So
yeah,
it was interesting.
Wow, I'm excited to just get into all the things, and I'm glad that you started us off on the right note. So let's go back to the point where you wanted to quit. Were you thinking about a sabbatical at that time, or were you thinking about I'm just gonna quit? And if you don't mind sharing, what were some of the things that were making you feel like you wanted to quit?
Yeah. So I really didn't know what it was going to be, honestly. And it wasn't something that I had even 6 months prior to like taking that break. It wasn't something that I thought about because I had just signed up with a PR agency to help me get on podcasts. I had all these podcasts scheduled that I was going to be interviewed on. I had stuff in the works. I had clients that I was finishing up, and I mean, it's sort of, I would say after the first couple of months into this year, into 2022, I just really was having a hard time like slogging through it all. I didn't want to show up on social media. I've had kind of a love-hate relationship with social media for a long time.
Don't
anyway.
we all?
I think it's a thing. Yeah, I definitely think it's a thing. And, I was kind of going through my own healing journey on a personal level, and I was really focused on that. And I kind of didn't want to be bothered with thinking about my business or creating content for my business or frankly helping anybody sell anything. Like I just wanted to feel better. And so I needed to step away. And I didn't know when I did step away, I didn't really know what the end was going to be. I didn't know if it was going to be a permanent step away or a temporary step away. And, I'm back. So I guess it was temporary.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you are. And I also want to point out and commend you for your courage, because not many of us have that courage to say that, you know what, I'm going to focus on my personal healing. We kind of try to push that down as much as we can. And I'm sure you must have had the same feelings as well for many, many years as well. Let me just put on the side burner. It's going to happen. And let me just focus on my business. And it takes a lot of courage to say that, you know what, no, before I can help someone else, I need to fill my own cup. Did you have any feelings of guilt or shame? I'm asking you because I had those.
Yeah, of course. I mean, and also, I guess, discomfort around the fact that, I'm going to be totally honest. Like I'm in a situation where my husband makes more money than me. Like he's the breadwinner of the family. He always has been. So any money that I brought in from my business was not, it didn't keep our family afloat. So it was that there's a certain freedom in that, right? Like yeah. I was free to kind of experiment with different things and figure out what I wanted to do, take clients or not take clients. And I have to admit, if I hadn't been in that position,
yeah,
it wouldn't have been such an easy choice to step away, because I didn't need to make money to pay our mortgage.
For sure.
So I want to acknowledge that, because
Absolutely.
That's really important. But of course I felt guilt, because, I had spent years building this thing. And, although I wasn't like a multiple 6-figure business owner, I had come to rely on that money, and I gained a sense of self-worth from sort of being good at something,
mm-hmm.
or I thought that's what it was. And, kind of maybe we'll get into a little bit, like I was kind of looking in the wrong places for those things, which I sort of also realized on this whole, in this whole last year of like working on stuff. But, yeah, I mean, there were all the feelings, scared, angry that I could be giving it all up after working so hard for what I had, all of it.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that. But of course, you're back now, so we all know that there's an end to the sabbatical. There's an end to that feeling as well. Let's go back to your personal healing. Do you mind sharing with us that what was it that you were doing at that time to heal yourself? And if you don't mind sharing your story with the listeners as well.
Yeah. So we're going to go down a road.
Yeah.
I'm like I said to you on Voxer, I'm an open book, ask me whatever you want, but I just want to, really make it clear that like, I'm not at the end of any of this. Like, I'm not at the after, right? I've had an amazing year. My life has changed dramatically, but I know that it's not the after. And I think we get really hung up on the we all want to see the amazing after,
right.
But mm-hmm. I'm kind of still in the middle of figuring it all out. And I kind of find like every little end point is like another starting point. So, but that I digress here. So I really kind of started to, about a year ago, started to really get curious about why I felt like I could not find the solutions I was looking for. Like I had taken every course. I hired so many coaches. I had been in therapy off and on for, 20 to 25 years. I've done all the self-help books, all of the things. And somehow, I still felt like I was struggling to feel like I had a place here, like I was looking for all of these answers outside of myself. And I thought if I had the successful business, if I could make my body conform to what it, society tells me it should conform to, if I had this certain look, if I had this certain web presence, if my life looked a certain way, then maybe it would be, perfect enough. And I would feel worthy. I would feel lovable. I would feel like I belonged. Mm-hmm. But it was like I was chasing this thing that I wasn't going to find it in these places. So I kind of started getting curious about, well, like what can I do? How can I stop this running after, things that aren't working? And basically throwing money at this problem. And that, it was a lot of problems, but so I kind of started doing some research and watched some documentaries. I learned about microdosing, mm-hmm. which is people microdose either LSD or psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms, and for different purposes, for different reasons, but mostly the information that I gathered was about microdosing psilocybin to relieve anxiety and depression. And I wasn't depressed, but I did have kind of a generalized anxiety. And I had complex PTSD, which I didn't know at the time. and kind of was just struggling with issues from all of that, that really kind of developed as a result of childhood trauma. So when I first heard about it, it seemed very radical, right? Because psilocybin is illegal. It's a Schedule I drug. And I thought, oh, that's crazy. People are taking this drug. It's like, it's crazy. It seemed crazy to me because I grew up in the 80s where, it was say no, just say no. And, all drugs were bad. It was going to scramble your brain. And certainly psychedelics in particular, we were taught, like, the narrative was, you try these once, you're going to either go crazy or you're going to jump out a 6-story window and fall to your death. So I had all of that, kind of bias in my head. And also I came from a family of addicts. So drugs of any kind, alcohol, all of that was really scary to me because I didn't want to be another statistic. I didn't want to keep that cycle going in my own family. But, the more that I researched it, the more I couldn't ignore the fact that in this country, we have this kind of false narrative around drugs, and certain drugs are considered good, right? And certain drugs are considered bad. And we don't have all the information. And there's a reason that we don't have all the information. But so I kind of learned as much as I possibly could. And then when I felt that I understood enough and believed enough that it wasn't going to be dangerous for me, I decided to try it. And that was the first kind of my introduction into using psychedelics to heal. I microdosed. I did two separate courses of microdosing, and it was about 8 weeks long. Then I took a 2-week break and did another 8 weeks. And what happened for me was that it greatly reduced my anxiety. And it kind of, I started to feel more of a connection to other people, not so uncomfortable to be around other people. Like, I always had this, I would get this pain in my chest when I had to be around other people. I felt so uncomfortable and so self-conscious. And it really alleviated that, made me feel more of a connection to others and the world. Like, I started going outside and being in nature. I started walking every day. And I mean, it sounds simple, but it was like, I felt like, okay, I have a place here now, right? Like, it kind of started to create that sense of connection. And from there, I thought, okay, well, this has really helped me. What more? And of course, like, once you're in that space, you kind of start to hear more and more of things you've never heard, or things you didn't know. And I started to read a lot about MDMA assisted therapy. There's, trials being done on that. Actually, I think the phase 3 trials are over at this point, and probably that MDMA assisted therapy will be legal in this country probably within the next year or two. But it's not. And, I learned that there are therapists doing underground MDMA assisted therapy. There are communities where people are doing it and talking about it, getting support from each other, harm reduction techniques, all of that. So I decided to pursue that. MDMA in particular has been known to heal PTSD. And so that was something that I really wanted to focus on for myself. And so I started working with an integration coach in January. Well, we started working together actually last August.
And this is the same person who was helping you with the microdosing as well. Am I correct?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I told her that, I was ready for the next step. And, we talked about like what protocol would be best for me. And I decided on MDMA, and that's kind of where it took me from there.
And so when you started taking the MDMA therapy, this was back in January. And
January was the first
around
time.
The same time when had you decided by the time that you wanted to take a sabbatical?
No. definitely not. I was still sort of plugging along, like doing all the things.
Yeah.
And not really feeling great about it. Not really feeling like, I felt like what I was doing as far as my business was concerned just wasn't working. And I was really kind of losing interest in it because I had bigger fish to fry, so to speak. It was like, it became very obvious that like I'm focusing all these efforts on growing my business, and that's really not the problem, you know?
True. Yeah. Yeah. You had to heal. You had to first pay
Absolutely.
attention to yourself.
Yeah.
Tell me about your experience with the MDMA. So your anxiety was it gone by the time you were microdosing, or was it helping it?
I wouldn't say it was gone completely, but I would say it was very well managed.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing about microdosing that, at least in my experience, was it really started to bring a lot of emotions to the surface that I had shut down for a long, long time. So there were moments where I could experience, just pure joy and gratitude and be really, just in the moment and happy. And then there were some moments where I would just cry, like for no reason. I'd be watching a commercial and I'd cry. And I always used to shut that down, like for a long time. I didn't let anybody see me cry. I didn't want to, feel weak or whatever it was. Right. I don't know, but it started to peel those layers down.
Yeah.
And then the next step with MDMA it was like kind of, I don't even know how to describe to you, but MDMA sort of brings down your walls, your defenses a little bit. So you can sort of realize things. You can understand the truth about something without it completely destroying you. There are reasons that we shut our emotions down. There are reasons that we don't remember things. There are reasons that we kind of have memories where we're dissociated, right?
Especially in complex trauma, especially when
Yes.
you've gone through something so traumatic, it is a defense mechanism from our brain and from our bodies.
Absolutely. And MDMA allows you to experience those things without shutting it down. Like you are faced with it, but you have this compassion and this love for yourself that sort of makes it all okay. It's like you can do this. You can get through this.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the kind of the biggest things that I experienced in the different sessions is a lot of somatic release. Like if anybody's familiar with that book, The Body Keeps the Score, when you experience trauma, it gets trapped in your body. Like we dissociate from our body, so we don't experience the full impact of what's happening. But when you don't feel that pain, it has to go somewhere, right? So I don't pretend to understand the science of it or what, like how it works or what happens, but it gets stuck in your body. And I have always, for as long as I can remember, had a very definitive disconnection from my body. Like I was never intuitive with like, oh, when I eat this, I feel this way. Or when I go to this place, I get these weird vibes. Like I didn't have that, if anything, I was very hyper vigilant. So like everything felt dangerous. Right. So in my first few sessions, especially, there was a lot of just releasing that body pain, that body trauma. I like lots of deep sighs, lots of deep breathing, and like pushing energy through my body. Mm-hmm. And I would not have believed that if you told me before, but I'll tell you, especially after the first session, I felt like I didn't realize I had been carrying this 2-ton boulder around, like up a hill my entire life. And it was just gone. It was just gone. It was crazy. And I'm getting emotional talking about it. So, those that's like the kind of the biggest thing that I could say, that I felt a difference. But kind it's kind of like peeling the layers of an onion, with microdosing. Well, let me even back up before that. Like I had done years of things, right? Like I said, courses, coaching, seminars, self-help books, all the things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to say those things didn't help me, because I think they did help me, but maybe that allowed me to sort of peel the first 2 layers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then with microdosing, maybe that got me like 5 more layers in. And the MDMA assisted therapy is like, we're going to the core of this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you are just presented with these truths that are like, they're fucking hard to look at, but
Mm-hmm.
you have to be able to see it and like mourn it in order to get past it,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is the most important thing about, this journey home to self that, I talk about often, is that there is no way under it, no way over it. We have to go through it. We
Mm-hmm.
just have to go through it. And through it means looking at some of the painful memories, some of the painful events as well, because ultimately those are the things, like you said, they have been wrapped on you like, an onion.
Mm.
And the only thing that you're doing is you're peeling away. Right? I love, you shared this story on Instagram about, it was a journal, and I messaged you and I was like, oh my God, I love this so much. Can I screenshot it and share it? And it said something like, you're not lost. You're not a $10 bill that to be found in a coat pocket next winter. You haven't gone anywhere. You're you. You have to just unbecome. You have to not find yourself, but you have to come home to yourself. How, maybe you don't even have the answer to this, I don't know, but when I heard, or when I hear psychedelics, I think of, and that's probably my uneducated version of this, is I think of those shaman journeys that people go on.
Mm-hmm.
How is this different from that? And although I haven't gone on one, I have had plenty of friends who've gone on these journeys, and they've had amazing insights and traumas reversed and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
How was your therapy with MDMA different from, let's say, a psychedelic? I don't even know what they call it. I can't recall, a mushroom journey or a psychedelic journey that people go on.
Yeah. Well, there are different kinds. And MDMA is not a classic psychedelic from what I understand, but that's the one that most of the research has been done on. And that's the one that's closest to being approved for therapy. Mm-hmm. And if people, I want to, make it clear that there are safety protocols, there's a whole, a treatment plan and all of that. So if people want to understand more about it, they can go to MAPS.org. MAPS stands for the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies, I think. Don't quote me on that.
We'll put that in the show notes for everyone.
Yeah. So that's a great resource, and they can talk, you can read about kind of the research that's been done and the people that it's helped. I know I've heard of, there's ayahuasca, which I think you might be referring to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where you can go to,
yeah.
I think I don't know. It's derived from a plant. I don't know that there's any research being done on that, but yes, I have heard the same stories. People have had amazing journeys and had a lot revealed to them. I have not experienced ayahuasca. There's LSD. Some people, actually, LSD was one of the first psychedelics. It was actually used in psychiatry in the 50s. I mean, it was in Time magazine, like all the things. It was touted as like kind of the next, amazing cure for different mental illnesses. And I guess the Nixon administration put a stop to that in the following decade and kind of demonized it. And I mean, there's a lot to that story, which you can also learn, but LSD was used in treatment for addiction, like it's treated alcoholics, it's treated drug addiction. You can learn more all about these things there's a documentary on Netflix called How to Change Your Mind. It's from Michael Pollan's book. He wrote a book of the same name that basically talks about different people's experiences, healing journeys, including his own with these different psychedelics. Mm-hmm. And also magic mushrooms, psilocybin. People have, use that for healing as well. I have had 3 psilocybin journeys, but my main mode of healing is MDMA.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So is that of course you're saying that, there was protocol to it. Of course, everything must have been within the guidelines of the coach and, based on what you needed for healing versus I don't know, maybe I don't know the half truth about ayahuasca, but in ayahuasca, there's of course guidance and everything, but it isn't targeted to a specific, let's say, trauma, or there isn't like a plan, right?
What I don't for any of the therapy that I understand, whatever I understand about it, there's really not a set plan per se, but there's a lot of talk about set and setting in psychedelic therapy. So, I guess that's what kind of makes the difference between people who are, out at a party and taking, well, even what they might think is MDMA or ecstasy, which most of the time it's not, that the intention there is not healing, right? So it's about having a certain intention. It's about having a safe space, and sort of also having a lot of people recommend having a guide, because when stuff starts to get real, like, it can be really upsetting and really scary. And if you have a therapist there with you or a guide there with you, they can, help you sort of move through that.
Right.
And just know you're okay. Right. But if you're out with your friends and you're partying, and first of all, you're not getting like the pure substance, but second of all, something comes up and your friends are like, we're having a good time. I don't know, what you want me to do about this. It can be, you can, really be off-putting and kind of cause, I think, more trauma or what's the word I'm looking for? Like re-trigger the trauma,
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, it's for everything, right? You can use anything for something good, or you can use anything for something which is more destructive, more deteriorating. So
yeah, definitely.
I'm sure it's true for the same as well. I would love for you to talk about, you mentioned this a little bit, that all of us are looking for the after. That's what we are looking for eventually, right? We want to reach that point where we are happy and content and peaceful and joyful, and our lives look perfect, and we have the perfect partners and the perfect kids, and our bank accounts are full and overflowing. But nobody wants to talk about or address the messy middle in the bed. And I feel like that's where most people spend a lot of their times in. Yeah, the after is very short-lived, but the messy middle is also where a lot of lessons and a lot of insights derive from. If I look back on my last 2 years, there have been great moments, but the ones that I truly, truly remember are the ones which were in the messy middle. So talk to me a little bit more about that. What were your feelings when you were in it? How did you cope with it? I would also love to know, like, if you have any hindsight, if you have any perspective on that, now that you are, of course, not arrival. There is no arrival. They're like these infinite journeys that we take on, but, a little bit of like release of some of the trauma that you were holding on to.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, the messy middle is like, that's where I'm living at the moment, but I think in hindsight, the myth is that you can't be happy there. I feel like I definitely, I think before we started recording, maybe it was on Voxer, you mentioned something about like, not even understanding that the messy middle existed. And that I totally relate to that, because I always thought, okay, well, like it's either this or that, it's black or white. You're either the before or you're the after. And you there's no middle, right? Like once you decide, you're just going to change everything and you're going to do things a different way. But one of the things that I have sort of realized is that I don't have to wait for a certain thing to happen to be happy or to experience joy or to have all of the things that I used to think were going to just appear after, whatever change I made.
Yeah.
And I mean, every day I am in the middle of figuring this all out still. Like I've healed a lot of things, but now one of the things that psychedelics helps with is sort of opens up your choices. Like now you sort of see that you have these choices. Whereas before, like I said, it was either this or that. Like I'm either doing things sort of the habitual way because that's the way my brain used to work. And, I was dragging all of this shit with me that, I didn't feel like I had any other options. Like everything that I was doing was out of self-preservation, really. And so at first I thought, okay, well, if I heal that, then I'm going to do everything the perfect way. Everything's going to be perfect. And I'm going to be healed and well and like enlightened and all of that. But no, it's like now I just see that I have other options, right? But I still have to be the creator. I still have to choose which options I'm going to try. And that's all it is. It's trial and error. Do I want to eat this or do I want to eat that? Do I want to, take this course or do I want to take this course? Or do I want to create this content today? Do I want to focus on something else today? It's like, there's no, I don't know how to,
it sounds to me, from a listener's perspective is that and correct me if I'm wrong, you probably realize that instead of living either in the past or the future, you're now more in the present moment. And in that present moment, you have choices that you can make.
Right. And I never saw them before.
Yeah.
I never saw the choices. Like it wasn't even in my like vision. It wasn't even in my line of sight. So that is really interesting because I can also see the duality of things. I can sort of see that you can feel two different ways at once.
Oh my
God.
And
you can take a pause. Like I used to be so reactive about anything that happened, any little triggering thing. I had so much rage, under the surface that I didn't even realize. And now it's like, there's always this pause here, there's something happens and I can see, oh, this used to trigger me and I would have blown up at this. But now, like, I have a minute. How do I actually feel about it? Does it matter? Does it not matter? How do I want to react? And it's like, it's life-changing. I mean, it sounds like such a simple thing, but it is life-changing.
No, it is life-changing. And I haven't had a psychedelic experience yet, but I had a Kundalini awakening in one of the retreats that I went to. And that was very, very intense as well. And, it's been, there's a lot of research being done on the Kundalini awakening. And of course, some people don't call it that. Some people just call it the raising of the energy. But are you aware of the term, the Kundalini?
I know a little bit about it, but, not a lot.
I'll probably have to do another podcast episode on the entire experience. It was really, really interesting and intense. But, it's believed that we all have these energy centers called the chakras, the 7 chakras in our body. And of course, there are more in our energy field. And there is this life source energy that is coiled, that is gathered at the base of our spine in the root chakra. And there is a way to ascend that energy and take it into your ring. And when you do that, basically, when the energy is moving through it, it moves through all the trauma as well. It needs a space to go, right? It needs space to move in. And because trauma is held in our bodies, it just pushes the trauma out. Of course, in a lot of cases, you have to be careful with it. You have to do it in a supervision and all of that. But it's been proven there are people who are doing it, that it's not only doable, but it's very safe and it can be done again and again and again. And when I had that experience, when I felt that energy rise to my head and just had like a total blissful experience, like there's no other way to describe it. It was like a full body orgasm experience for me. And I was in it for days. It took me about 7 days to be in that. And I've had it a couple of times since then. And every time I've had it, that has been my experience as well, that, the present moment is only there is. And there is like so much compassion for not just me, for everybody. Like you suddenly start having compassion for even the people who have wronged you, or you thought that wronged you. You have so much forgiveness. You feel that we're all connected. And most importantly, I think you, like you were saying, you will start seeing that you can have two different emotions and feelings at the same time without judging it. I think one of my biggest realization at that time was that, oh my God, I am completely peaceful at the same time, completely chaotic. And the fact that I'm okay with both these emotions in my body right now, in my life right now, is just blissful.
Yeah.
And like I like, these things can't be described in words.
Yeah. It's very difficult to
It's very,
express
very
that.
difficult. Yeah, but I think that's what's possible, I guess. And that's what, now when I look back and I read some of the stuff written by, some of the known spiritual teachers, I really see that that's what they were trying to tell us. Being in the present moment. They're not telling us to go manifest things, but they are just telling us to be in the present moment and being okay with who you are and where you are, and come back home to yourself.
Yeah. I think, when you're in a place where, you're reading something like that, or you're kind of seeing something where I just any like affirmation, or, be in the present moment, for example, like it sounds easy, right?
Yeah.
And logically you might understand it, but if you're not in a place where you can actually embody that, it doesn't matter. Like nothing,
Totally.
no positive affirmation, no positive self-talk, none of that is going to change, how you feel, if you're not like acknowledging the real issues, and like able to move past that. I've tried it all, believe me.
Oh yeah, haven't we all? And that's why, most personal development courses, and, you can read as many self-help books as you want. They don't really work in the end, because unless and until you are tethered to the past. And I'm very, it's very interesting to hear you use the word, the 10-pound block or something like that you used. I was boulder carrying it on, the mountain. I used to call it my 10-pound monkey. I used to say I didn't know that I was carrying this 10-pound monkey and going everywhere and trying to be a normal person, trying to be a high achiever, an overachiever, and trying to be the best mom, the best spouse, the best business mentor, the best everyone, while having this heavy load on my back that's pushing me down. Until we are tethered to that past, there is no way you can be in the present moment, because even when you are in the present moment, you are in the past. You're always thinking about the past.
Absolutely. It's just crazy to me how that can shift. And now, maybe I would get more out of some of those self-help books or whatever, because like I feel it. Like I feel the difference in my body. I didn't feel that before. It was just words.
Yeah. Great example is that I bought Eckhart Tolle's book, The New Earth, years ago. And I tried to get into it. I tried to read a few pages, and I was like, oh my God, this is like, no, not for me. And I really, really tried very hard. And I remember last December, I was on a plane ride. I was coming back from, I think, Turks and Caicos. We'd gone there for a vacation. And I read the entire book on the plane, and it made absolute sense to me. I could understand everything that he was saying. It's just so, it's like, your perspective shifts. You feel a little lighter in your body because the trauma has left your body. You're more in the present moment. And now things start to feel different. Talking of which, so are you undergoing the therapy even now? Are you in the midst of it?
Yeah, a little less frequently. But I'm still, I still have sessions from time to time. And really it's not as much about what happens in those sessions. It's kind of the integration period between. It's like learning a new reality and, just really embodying that and practicing. That's kind of where most of the time is spent.
Yeah. I want to know, so what's been your learning integration since then? Of course, you've made some tremendous big changes in your life since then, some personal changes as well, and you're back from your sabbatical. Have there been any kind of like aha moments other than the ones that you've shared with us, or anything that you look back and you say, oh, wow, yeah, that was in perfect order. And that is what I learned from this journey?
Oh God, there's so many. I mean, just in terms of my business, it's really kind of given me clarity about um, how I want to show up and how I don't, and that, I don't want my identity wrapped up around my business. Whereas, I always thought like I wanted to be the best, most famous, well-known copywriter. I want people to, think I'm the best at what I do and everybody knows me and comes to me. That's so limiting. Like that's about this big. And I am so much more than that, and really what's more important to me is living my life and being the best. It sounds so cheesy, the best version of myself for the people that I care about, and that means taking care of myself first. And I don't know, having an existence outside of, how's this going to look on my Instagram feed, you know what I mean?
Yeah, which is so, I mean, artificial, right? Which is so like, it's just touching the surface. Like you said, there's so much more depth to us as humans. And even like the phrase best version of ourselves, like, who made it cheesy? Have you ever questioned why was it made cheesy?
I think it's one of those things that's overused, it's like, especially in our world,
Right, right.
it's an over.
Overused, and then we start looking at it as the untruth, and then we look at the advertisements who are trying to sell us anti-wrinkle cream and anti-aging and all of that as the real truth, as the absolute truth.
Yeah.
But we look at these things which are trying to make us into the best version of us as moms, as partners, as citizens, as humans. We think of that as, oh my God, that's so cheesy, I'm not even going to go there, I'm not even going to talk about it. It's interesting, right? It's just like, I'm a very curious person, so I always like to question things before embodying it. Love that. So, you're totally approaching your business from a different perspective, and I have to say, there's nothing more powerful than seeing a woman who is so embodied in her own self, in her own higher self. And when I see you now on Instagram, there's a different energy to it. There's like, I can't even put my finger on it. This is what you did differently. It's probably the same things that you were sharing, but there's a more grounded approach to you. There's a more grounded, and you're in your body more. That's how I can define it. Maybe also because I've known you before, you went on the sabbatical as well.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. I mean, and that's why, it's a little scary to talk about these things, because I know I'm going to be judged for it. Right. But the truth is, like, I'm just a mom. I'm just a wife. I'm just a business owner. I'm just somebody who was suffering like a lot of people are suffering. And I feel like if I knew what would be different if I knew that these tools were available 10 or 20 years ago, right? Like I firmly believe that, I was probably presented with the solution for me when I was ready for it. Yeah. But I think because there's such a stigma around it, and because there's such a false narrative around psychedelics in general, it was, it's most people don't understand the truth about them, and they don't understand the healing potential there. And so I think about that. If I had known, would things be different? Would I have more time sort of feeling as good as I feel now and living in the way that I live now? But that's why I think it's important to have these conversations, as uncomfortable as it is and as scary as it is, because I know some people are going to be like, okay, whack job, but like, it's just the truth. And so I feel like I want to share more of that, because if somebody else doesn't have to wait until they're 50 years old to have this experience and heal in the way that I have, then I think I'm all for that,
Yeah. And thank you so much. It takes a lot of courage to talk about things, even when you feel that, you're going to be judged or somebody's going to say, oh my God, she's like crazy or whatever, what have you. It takes a lot of courage. So thank you so much for, bringing this topic, because I do agree that there's so much stigma and taboo around using psychedelics or even like Kundalini energy. There's so much
Mhm.
taboo around, these topics, that people don't talk about the benefits of it. And there's never black and white. There's always some truths that we are missing. And if that has helped you, and if there's just even one person who's listening who can be curious enough, and we're not saying go and buy drugs and start doing it. We're
No,
saying do your
definitely
own
don't.
research, get curious about it. That's not what Christy did. Get curious about it. Go find safe spaces and then make a choice for yourself. This is an option. It's not an absolute necessity, but it's an option available to you. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing all that, Christy.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for being willing to, talk about something that's kind of iffy.
Christy, I have two questions for you, actually three. First of all, like, if somebody is curious and they want to know more, they want to know more about psychedelics. You've already mentioned one website. What, in your opinion, would be the best place to start for them? Where can they start? Where can they start getting curious enough or to start getting help?
I would start with either the Michael Pollan book, How to Change Your Mind, or the documentary on Netflix of the same name. That's really, it kind of gives a great overview, cites some science, and it gives you the information to kind of dig a little bit deeper if you want to.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to put that in the show notes. My second question to you is, I always say that there is no arriving on the journey home to self. We are constantly in the process. In fact, how I look at it, it's an infinity symbol for me.
Yeah.
What part of your journey home are you at right now? And if there's any lesson or challenge or struggle or gift that you're seeing in it, if you would love to share it with our listeners.
Yeah. So I think, where I am right now is really, I've stopped looking to other people to take care of me. I know that sounds weird, but one of the things I think I've had to kind of accept after looking at all the things that happened to me, and my focus was like, what did people do to me and what happened to me? But I had to kind of look at like, how have I been shown up in my own relationships? Like, what has it been like for people to be in relationship with me? And it hasn't been easy because, I think I tended to expect people to take care of me in a way that my parents, my caregivers did not. And so there was a lot of expectation. There was a lot of judgment, um, it's really difficult to be with somebody like that because you can't live up to those expectations, right? So I think just understanding that, like, I am responsible for me, and like, I've got this, like, I'm okay. I don't need somebody to I don't need to look to somebody to fill me up. Like, I know what to do. I'm always going to have my back. And yeah, like, Christy 2022 is not at 50 years old is grown up and mature, and she's not the 5-year-old Christy 1977. Like, I've got it under control.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, love that. Love that. That's so beautiful. That is it's such an empowering thought, right?
I hope so. I feel pretty good about it. It's like, and it doesn't come with that heavy, like, it used to be kind of sad, to think like, I can't, not that I can't rely on other people, but like, oh, that I've got to do this all myself.
Uh-huh.
But like, it feels good now because it's like, I have everything I need to do it, and
Yeah.
I'm freaking good at it. So
I love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Christy, for coming on the show. People who are interested in finding more about you, where are you hanging out these days? Where can we know more?
you can always go to my website, ChristyCegelski.com. I'm actually working on, I show up a little bit on Instagram, but I'm working on the whole static 9 grid thing. So it's going to kind of be more of a landing page, and I'm going to still like create stories and reels here and there, but probably that's a good place to find me too.
Wow. Wow. That's interesting. I want to know more about the static 9 grid after we press pause. All right, we're going to put all of that in the show notes. Is your podcast, is it on? I know that was on a sabbatical as well. Are you going to be getting back to it soon?
I don't know. It's
that.
up in the air. There are things I miss about it, but I also kind of don't miss the work of it. It's a lot of work, you guys, to put on a podcast. A lot.
It is. And I love whenever someone says that, you know what, I don't know what the answer is going to be to this, and it's up in the air. We'll see about that. I want to definitely mention you do write on Substack as well. And you mentioned that you write on microdosing. Is that some place that you would be willing to share with our listeners that they can go and learn more about you and about microdosing?
Yeah, I'm happy to share. It's funny, I haven't really outed myself on this too much, but I do have a newsletter on Substack. It's called I'm Just Saying, and I'll share the link with you. And I talk about all the things, like everything, but I have shared my story about healing with psychedelics there. So a little bit kind of more in depth in how the journey progressed.
I would love to take a look at it myself. I'm very curious, and we'll put all of that in the show notes. Thank you again, Christy, for sharing your journey, sharing your story, and we wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you liked this one or any other episode, there are 3 ways you can support us. Number 1, come home. Start your journey. That's literally the whole point of this podcast. To inspire you, to empower you, and to give you the knowledge and tools so you remember who you really are. Number 2, I'd be so grateful if you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. That helps us get in front of more people. Number 3, share it with someone, a friend, a family member, a loved one, a peer. You never know how much someone needs to hear this today. Thank you again, and until next time, remember, you're whole, you're enough, you're worthy, you are unlimited, and you are perfect just the way you are. I'll see you next time.